Thanks so much for being here today, Ross.
Hey.
Hey,
It's great
everyone.
to see you. Great to be here.
Yay. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeanette. I'm a regenerative detoxification specialist, iridologist, and alkaline health coach. Whoa, that's a mouthful. Ross has been helping me on my journey, my healing journey. And we go way back. We've been working together for 13 years. And he's been involved in crystal healing since the 70s. He's been my spiritual mentor, spiritual teacher, and like a brother to me all these years as well. You know, Ross, you're like family.
Hey, yeah, likewise.
So we thought we'd do this video for you all today, just to kind of, share a little bit, maybe potentially inspire you on your journey, your healing journey, your path, and to potentially, just to share and maybe offer you a little bit of encouragement.
Right on. So, I wanted you to share more about your work, and I, tell me about yourself, in your line, because I really don't know. I've heard, a number of stories from you, but I've never heard you really hold forth on what you do with people and how you practice your healing with people.
That's true. I am quite the storyteller in our sessions. You're a good listener. Yeah, thanks for asking about what I do. Actually, I have recently updated my website, thehealingjunction.ca. And it's basically to just share exactly what you just asked, what I'm up to. For the last few years, I've been providing coaching sessions for people in Toronto, Ontario. And there's a big community of us regenerative detoxification specialists doing this all over the world. And we're kind of acting like little lighthouses for people, just to show them that the body heals itself. Our trainings are with Dr. Robert Morse. And I also have trainings from 2011 as well in Germany with Dr. Peter Gensura. And he started me on the alkaline acid balance and trained me as an alkaline health coach before it was trendy. The term alkalinity and alkaline diet these terms are very trendy in our day and age. And I feel really, really blessed that I was able to learn from this healer in Germany back in the day before I was even really practicing it myself. It actually took me a near-death car accident, as Ross, I've shared a lot about that, with a C-spine injury to really start walking the talk. And, the pain was so strong. I was prescribed oxycodone, and I didn't want to go on painkillers because, I came from addiction as a teenager, and I didn't want to go down that path again. I know that these medications can be really useful in certain times, but for myself, it didn't seem like the best option. So I started implementing a lot of, the alkaline approach from Dr. Gensura, but I realized, I was still suffering. And his thing is everything is kind of in moderation. You try to eat a lot more plant-based, but, he says you can still have a little bit of, let's call it what it is, a little bit of dead animals now and then, but I had to go deeper, and because I was still eating some meat and I wasn't actually healing 100%. I felt a lot better, but I wasn't 100%. And then I think a lot of the meditation and a lot of the inner work I was doing just led me to find Dr. Morse. And it was from there, like, when I really started to experience the healing. Of course, it's not easy. You have to eliminate a lot of different foods that maybe you once loved,
Right on.
So I'm working with clients now. I'm doing Skype only at this point. I was working out of a clinic for 3 years, and I just realized something about myself. It's something I still have to work on and grow from, but it's, I care too much. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's a tricky one for a lot of people who commit to healing. To me, is what I call over concern for others. And, you know, you can burn out pretty quickly if you have too much of that energy, that over concern. So it's finding that balance in ourselves, that we have concern, but it's balanced. We're not, you know, making ourselves anxious about it in any way, you know. And that's, yeah, I had to learn that. It took me a number of years.
Did you really?
I use a Bach flower essence called red chestnut, a vibrational system that's very beautiful, and it really helped me to find that balance. Red chestnut is given for that issue specifically, over concern for others. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I love that you work with the flower essences. That's a really complementary modality to the detox program that I'm involved with. And yeah, we actually, going back to the whole thing about caring too much, like we actually call it detached compassion when we're training at the International School of Regenerative Detox. Yeah. Another mouthful. Dr. Morse's school in Florida, you know, he teaches that. And the way he explained it to me, I saw him recently, I think it was January, I was in Florida. And I said, you know, Dr. Morse, I just don't think I'm cut out for, you know, this coaching. At the time, I hadn't decided that I would continue doing it online. Sure. And that might be a solution for me in terms of like creating a boundary. You know, if I can't do it myself, why not use the interweb highway for that boundary that naturally exists there? Because I know being around people, you know, as an empath, you feel their energy much stronger than through, you know, the computer. But yeah, he said, you know, what's happening is your energy when you care is actually attaching to that person that you want so badly to see healthy and in a state of vitality. And then you create this like bond, you know, you're chained. Because if the person say, you know, maybe it's their karma, you know, that they're not able to heal and they've tried everything, you know, and then how does that make the healer feel? We have to be able to deal with that in a healthy way and know that we really showed up for this person in the best way that we could and offered them the best advice that we could. You know, and I know that the program works. It's, you know, there's like hundreds of thousands of us doing this, a lot of fruitarians out there now because of this program, because we do use fruit, the astringency of fruit to really detoxify and pull on the lymphatic system. And that's the other problem is like, you know, the world isn't really aware of the lymph system. And, you know, we're made up of 75% lymph. We only have 25% blood, but the medical system has only taught us to focus on the blood. And that's where, you know, all the blood work and everything, but they never talk really about the lymph until it's a lymphoma. So they know the term, you know.
Sure, right on.
That's a whole other issue. So yeah, working with people with a regenerative detoxification diet, but also using Iridology, which is, I know your dear friend, Dr. Bernard Jensen, he practiced for 75 years. I know you two go way back.
Yeah. Yeah, I was privileged to meet him, like, you know, 35 years ago. So, yeah.
Yeah, were you involved in macrobiotics and all that stuff as well?
At that time, yeah, I had already been involved with the macrobiotic community in Toronto at that time. And the founder in America, well, the founder was George Oshawa, but Michio Kushi led the macrobiotic community out of Boston. We were a group of us were bringing him up to Toronto to teach us about macrobiotic theory and practice. And so that community was very strong. So I started there really in my early 20s because I had my own illnesses. I had, you know, because of diet, I had an ulcer, you know, and with that diet, I cured it within, well, about 8 months. It was over, and it's never come back.
Those can be painful. I've also created an ulcer within my being at one point or another in my life due to stress, you know?
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So he was as good a guy as everyone says he is?
He was, really. He just exuded compassion. He was an incredibly compassionate man. It was just who he was, you know, at that point in his life, you know, because he was getting up there when I met him. And yeah, I just, you know, I mean, I loved the teaching, but I just wanted to be in the room with him. It was like that. Yeah.
That's awesome. I totally relate. I've found many of you healers in my life, you know, and
Yeah.
just the opportunity to even just hang with y'all is such a
Yeah.
blessing.
Yeah. It's a spiritual brotherhood, if you will, you know, and I think for all of us involved with spiritual work, we need to find our family or families, you know. It's different for different people, you know, but to me, my view is, you know, follow your heart and you'll connect with those people. And to me, that to me is the cosmic internet, I call it. You know, it's like this a whole other level that's really there. And you know, I use crystals to help me to tune up to that level of consciousness around the world. And I've got to meet an extraordinary number of people who are into it. And now I'm on Instagram, so I'm connecting with a lot of people into crystals on Instagram.
Yeah, you're Ross Andaloro or Source Quest?
It's under my name. It's under Ross Andaloro.
Perfect. Andaloro, Andaloro. Are you able to show any crystals near you right now? I know you're usually surrounded by.
Well, that crystal there, right there, behind me, that's a 35-pound point. It's one single point. That crystal is, you know, a key crystal in the collection, which is quite extensive at this point because I've been collecting since I was 23. So the first crystal I worked with was an amethyst from Brazil. And that one I just carried in my pocket for 6 months. Met a gentleman and his wife from Edmonton at the time, who I purchased it from, and I just put it in my pocket. And 6 months into it, at that point I was dowsing. I was using a dowsing instrument. A dowsing instrument is like, you know, something that, you know, in this case, there's one there. That's a crystal cut to my own specifications in Ontario. Actually, I've been using this instrument now for well over 30 years. And the thing about crystals is, to me, finding the one that works for you, that helps you to tune to source, to tune to your community, to help you heal yourself, to raise your consciousness to a level of awareness that you can really get very specific when something is happening that's fearful in you and is stopping you from moving ahead in your life, and you know it. You know, so the crystals can be very useful, and so I teach that process and help people find the right crystals in some cases to start them off. You know, that's the trick, is to get the beginning one. So that amethyst I was talking about was my first crystal. And amethyst is quartz with a violet hue. So I'm very interested in that, in the quartz crystal community, but I use a whole other range also.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the crystal therapies that you've done with me, it's been intense. You know, I think it's that little one that you hold there, that when you have me in a meditation.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you're going all around,
well,
and
I spin it over the crown chakra. My work works right through the crown chakra. So I'm holding it and it spins by itself. I just hold it.
Whoa.
It spins by itself, and then when the procedure is finished, it stops spinning, basically.
I could feel it. I remember the very first time sitting in meditation.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what any of this stuff was. And I had just heard from a dear friend about you. She said, you know, you got to see this healer. He's helping me so much. And you had me in this meditation with my feet planted, grounded on the ground, which was new for me to even think of grounding. I was just such a, you know, they say in Ayurvedic, it's wind. I don't know the exact dosha it's called, Vata maybe, or I might be wrong.
You got me there.
I had a lot of wind, and I still do, and I always need to work on grounding and coming back to my body and breathing. And I'll just never forget the sensation in my body while you were doing the clearing, and I could feel, like, I could feel the wind around me too, actually. And I had my feet planted, and you had me visualizing a multicolored triangle of light coming from my navel down into the ground. The top of the triangle was my navel, rooting all the way down into the molten lava and back up. And I'm meditating on this. And all of a sudden, my hands and my feet become completely numb. And then I'm like feeling tingling all in my arms and my legs. Like the energy shifting was incredible. It was so new to me, in this life. That was the start of our relationship back when I was in my 20s.
Sure. It's a huge process, really, really being here now. I mean, it's a famous phrase by a number of amazing consciousness people, be here now. But to be here in this physical body, totally, right? Totally conscious, totally aware. You have to release a lot of fears about that. Subconsciously, we have, the fear of other people, the fear of our own bodies, and these are locked in our energy field, and they stop us from being grounded. You'll see you'll see people, you'll say, well, that person, we have that term in the 60s, that they're really spaced out, and you can tell they're not really here, right? They're somewhere else, and so it's actually a courageous act to say, okay, I want to be totally in my body, in the moment, and totally conscious of my environment, and take it all in exactly the way it is, reality, right? And to me, so one has to be grounded in the body and release all of the fear states that are in the energetic field, physical, emotional, mental, anything that's programmed negatively that you don't need needs to be thrown out. And by the way, that's where crystals can be really useful. They help to cleanse, right? To release unnecessary blocks. They're not the only, I'm very interested in a whole range of techniques of what I call active meditations to release fear states, what I call unnecessary fear states that we tend to project onto people unnecessarily and ruin our lives as a result. My view is if we create inner peace here, then the world becomes a peaceful place for us. And if there's too much conflict out there, that means that there's probably something you're doing here subconsciously negatively that you're not aware of that you need to release. And that's not, to me, it's like, that's not the case in every case, because there are people who, want to engage negatively with you. And you need to be very careful about that. That if you're encountering something where they want to do, you can feel it. And just say, hey, you can disengage, we live in a free society, you can just leave, I really don't want to, you say, have a great day and we'll see you sometime. Bye.
Yeah, and so, you don't even have to say have a great day. It could just be in your energy, because I've experienced that as well, where I've said something, to someone in that energy that wanted.
Sometimes, silence is the best thing.
Yeah, because even you could say anything; it could be so kind, and it'll just set them off.
No, they want anything to hook in. Yeah.
And you help me so much with this, because I talk to like hundreds of people every week. I show up in health food stores as a special guest, and I'm talking to these people, and I never realized that the fear of another person was such a thing. Like, I didn't know that was I didn't know that was possible. Like, why are you afraid of just someone that you just met? Like, it's not like they're doing anything wrong, See,
exactly.
Aside from everything you just said about somebody that was in an anger state or, trying to pull you in, somebody that's just just an average person walking in, like, you don't feel any which way about, like, there can still be a fear, like, is this person going to like me? I want them to be fond of me.
The fear of not being accepted, I call that,
Yeah, and like, I want them to be fond of me, not because, I need them to like me, like the old Jeanette, in my younger days. It's now it's like, well, maybe if they like me, maybe I can kind of guide them a little bit, whatever they're ready to learn, maybe I can offer them something, and, doing it from a place of virtue. Like, but you do have to earn their affection first in order for them to want to even listen to what you have to say to them, So with the fear of other people, like if you could talk a little bit more of that and like, you know, maybe give some examples of how that might arise. Or...
Yeah, I think to me it's like this. We're talking about the subconscious mind. We're talking about things that were programmed into us at a very early age in our lives, both positively and negatively. Right? So that fear, often, like, if you're out walking around as a mother with a baby, and you'll see, something happen, like, whether the baby's really open to you or really fearful of you, and you're not doing anything, you're just standing there, and already this baby is going through positive things maybe or negative things. And just being aware of, that energy, it's there, it's real. And that we need to really consciously take responsibility for it and say, hey, I'm projecting something here that I don't need to project. This isn't about now. This is something from the past, somehow, somewhere, that I'm projecting onto the moment that has nothing to do with what's going on here.
Somehow, somewhere, at some other point in my life, I experienced something negative, and now I'm projecting that here in this moment, and that thing's way past.
Exactly. It's actually history, but because it's not conscious history, where you've chosen to say, hey, to that, maybe sometimes you need to have a conversation with that part that's in fear. Just to say, hey, there's nothing to fear here. This person is just standing here doing nothing. They're okay.
Yeah, I used to get that with babies a lot. I'm glad you mentioned babies.
Yeah.
It's like you're looking into their eyes because their eyes are so wide. Like you enter this world with these wide eyes, ready to just totally take open. Everything in,
Yeah, we're totally open, and we come in and we don't even, if our bodies are totally, healthy, it's like you can see a baby when they, the first time they feel pain in their body, it's like a totally new experience. All of a sudden, they're blissed out, and all of a sudden they're crying like crazy, and nothing's happened outside in their environment, but they're crying because something has happened internally, a growing pain most likely, and it's like, what's going on here? So we develop the fear of our own bodies pretty early on because of these things. This is the way it's set up in terms of the body doing its thing of growing. So that needs to be taken care of and needs to be healed. And there are a lot of modalities that's being developed spiritually to open up the body and release the fears that are there.
Yeah, I did some work with this, with the whole baby thing when I was in Costa Rica last year. I took a couple of months, away from my normal life to hopefully shed some layers and go a little deeper within my healing journey. After you detoxify your physical body, it kind of connects you more to your spiritual, emotional body. And I felt like finally I'm ready to just go, and live with, less and spend a couple months like that. I had never stayed in a hostel in my life, and that was my first time living in the jungle, and not having, not being able to walk out my door and find like a million vegan restaurants and like raw plant-based little food joints, and then one of my friends there, she had a small baby who was she was 2 years old. She had just turned 2. And she would look at me with those big eyes. And I remember in the past when babies used to look at me, when I didn't really know myself, I guess. And I just I would project that fear, and then they would cry because they were feeling, what's going on within me.
Yeah.
And so I really did this practice of showing up for this little girl. She's such a beautiful soul. I really wanted to show her that, I love her and I want her to be well. So I would just look into her eyes, and if anyone saw me doing this, they'd be like, that's kind of creepy, but I could see that that's how she wanted to connect with me.
Sure.
So I just would just show up with this sense of peace and love and care and just look at her for a while. And,
Yeah.
Making eye contact isn't the easiest, let alone with this like innocent, beautiful being, they really challenge what's going on within you. It's a cool
Absolutely.
practice.
Yeah. Because it is a powerful self-awareness practice to be with the baby and to feel, to look, they're open. They're not, they're not resisting. Right. And you can feel your own resistance as a result, your own, whatever your subtle fears are about being that open with another human being. Right. It can be a very, I've experienced it myself, and it was a very deep healing event for me when it happened. It was very special.
Yes, it was for me as well. Yeah, so, but Dr. Bernard Jensen, I know we kind of went off on a bit of a different tangent there. But yeah, so one of the other things I'm really focused on doing right now is the Iridology. Because
right on.
That is, Dr. Jensen practiced it for 75 years. It's a legitimate science that the whole medical system has poo-pooed. It's like, oh, what? Something shows people where their genetic weaknesses are. Oh, they could actually, heal themselves. Oh, who cares about that? Let's focus on our medicine. And don't get me wrong, emergency medicine, emergency surgeries, we really need to rely on the medical system sometimes,
We're doing it right now with the science that's available around transmission of disease. That's what's happening right now with this extraordinary event.
Yeah, and there's people that really,
living in.
You really sometimes just need medical help, However, someone like me, like my issue was I just was chronically stuffed up, like congested since I was a child. And people still ask me sometimes, they're like, are you sick? You sound sick. I'm like, no, this is my weakness is the upper respiratory. It's just, you get a lot of like mucus, and that's the kind of thing I dealt with since a little girl. I had inner ear infections, like chronically as like a baby and little girl. I remember my parents took me on vacation in an airplane. We went to Florida, and I was just so small, and I was so congested. I was in so much pain. I was one of those babies that would just cry the whole time on the airplane because they're suffering. No one really knows why are they crying. Well, it's the pressure, and it's their lymph system. We take the lymphatic system from our mom. And, I know what my mom was eating during her pregnancy. A lot of congesting foods, you're emotional, and you want foods that are comforting. You're not going to just go to the fruits all the time. You're going through some real emotions. So, it's really interesting. Looking at the Iridology, you can see, like I saw that I had a genetic weakness in the upper respiratory. The sinuses were clogged. My whole head region, like I was backed up head to toe lymphatically. It's the only science that shows you the lymphatic system. And then it shows you every tissue, organ, and gland as well. So it'd be really cool if I had an iPhoto, I could show you, maybe when we get to learn how to use Zoom a little better.
Yeah, we can do that for sure. That would be great.
And then, do a little mini Iridology lesson. Like what's interesting is 12 o'clock, and from 10, so it's like a clock, the iris, right? And your right iris, by the way, shows you all the tissues, organs, and glands on the right side of your body. So your right kidney, for females, the right ovary, the right breast, right? And then the left iris shows you the whole left side. And this is how we learned that you actually need 2 kidneys. The body you weren't just born with an extra kidney, like they try to get you to believe. Of course, you would want to, potentially save a life, if it's a loved one and they need a kidney. But just know that you're really sacrificing a major organ in your body that's designed to cleanse your lymphatic system. So, but yeah, where was I going with that? It's going off on some rant.
Hey, that's okay. Just talk. It's like there's a lot to know. It's a huge area.
Yes. The brain. Thank you. So the upper portion of the iris represents the brain and the head. And there's these lesions that are there. in my personal iris analysis, you know, and these lesions are, they could be a number of things. It could be from a concussion, which I know I've had my fair share of. They could be from drugs, alcohol, different toxins in your environment, and also they're genetic. A lot of them are genetic, so you take them from your parents, and we call them radii solaris because they look like the sun, the rays of the sun. And yeah, it can be really detrimental to your nervous system, your mental health. So with iridology, when you see these things, you know which specific herbs, which specific botanicals, medicinal mushrooms you can use to heal this part of the body. So there's herbs that are tissue specific, right? And these herbs also cleanse. They basically see whatever is in your body that you don't want there, anything that's causing your body harm, and they grab onto them and they remove them. So they support the kidneys and yeah, the whole lymphatic drainage. Yeah, so it's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. The healing ourselves with diet, it's a beautiful thing to do, and it's really critical to me in terms of spiritual development. That this temple needs to be cared for appropriately, and the vibration raised at the physical level, and what we ingest definitely affects us. And that's why there's, you know, a lot of ritual around whatever plants were harvested, or animals that were killed for consumption. You know, it was done in a way that was in tune with the plants and the animals, you know, and the timing of harvesting at exactly the right time when that plant was peaking in its energy cycle. You know?
Interesting. Yeah, and even how they would, you know, our ancestors who did eat meat, you know, there was not much other option. They would the women would, harvest. They would go out and they would get
hunter-gatherers.
That's right.
And we ate whatever was available seasonally, and you know.
And the meat, the catching of the meat was so rare, you know, and then they would like you said, like kind of worship that being that sacrificed its life, you know, and the meat would be left, like it would be enjoyed, and it would just be, they would use every part of the animal, like it was a very sacred event, you know, rather than, you know, meat for breakfast, lunch, dinner every day, farming of animals, like the way it's gone now, you know, animal agriculture and all this. Yeah, such a difference, you know.
Yeah, I mean, my view is all food is medicine. So everything that we have in our society is medicine. That's, you know, good medicine, or it might be bad medicine for us, especially if so we have to make those decisions, you know. You know, you don't want toxic foods. You know, we have very, very stringent rules in place around, you know, food production, so that it's not contaminated, and, you know, with disease in some way. But we also kind of miss out in other areas around glycophosphates, for instance, is a problem these days. Seems to be, you know, the Europeans are involved with shutting it down, the use of it in Europe.
That's the GMOs? Is that Monsanto?
Yeah, well, that's
or
Monsanto,
the spray on the harvest. Like
the neonicotinoids they're called. That's the concern, is they're obviously they're killing bees, and so pollination becomes an issue. So how we affect our environment, I mean, you know, it's a huge thing now, and we really have to be aware of it. And right now, you know, I just saw last night, you know, a piece on how, you know, all the pollution levels have gone down around the world because of what's happening right now.
I know.
You know, it's like, this is like, to see it happen like that fast, right? And how fast it occurs once we shut down all of the combustible engines, for instance, just that one area, and wind down in heavy industry with coal or whatever we're using. We're getting to see that, and that's the extraordinary thing right now that's in play. It's like, you know we're affecting it negatively in a normal, you know, way, but now it's like we're into something a whole new So we get to see the change. Boom, hey. And if we can develop the technology to keep that change happening, to keep those environmental issues in play and healed, then we're all going to be a lot healthier. You know, the air we breathe. I'm sure there's people in Beijing that are going, yeah, I have to stay indoors, but when I open my window, I can breathe really good air. Right? So I'm sure a lot of humans are going through a lot of changes about the fact that they're getting to sit down in one place and breathe air in major cities that they haven't maybe ever experienced in their whole life.
Yeah. And maybe they haven't experienced just sitting and not doing anything, you know, and just being.
Just being. Yeah.
It's not easy for us all, you know. We've just been go, go, go all our lives. That was one of the biggest things I noticed with my detox is learning to just rest. And,
yeah,
you know, I found sound healings to be really beneficial because, you know, you're sitting there, you're not doing anything, and you're new to it. So you kind of, like with the sounds, the crystal bowls or the Tibetan singing bowls, which are my favorite, they just give you a little bit of something like to listen to, and then you're feeling your body for once in your life. You're like just aware of your body and aware of your breathing, and then, you know, you could even go into a body scan, which that's what I love to do when I'm in a sound healing. It's just like figuring out where there's points of tension in the body and just breathing and just the awareness of bringing your attention to those points of tension alone just releases. It allows that muscle to release.
Yeah. It's, awareness is everything. So once we become aware of a block in us, in our physical body or emotional body and in our energy field, then it's starting to release immediately. So awareness to me is everything. And that's what happens when we're silent or we're in meditation. We're just focusing on our breathing. Then it shifts and we let go and we relax and we get here. We come right here. And here is amazing. This is what it's all about from my point of view.
I know there's such a difference between just sitting here and being like, this is exactly where I want to be right now, and having that thinking versus, what do I have to do later? Oh, what's on my list, my to-do list? You know, what's next? Who am I going to see next? And all this anxiety, you know, we're just thinking about the future constantly. It's like, just enjoy.
I mean, to me, that we do need to think about the future. Obviously, we need to plan. But again, we come back to this over concern, and as soon as you have over concern, you're in a fearful state. You're in some kind of anxiety. You're projecting something about the future. Well, I have to be really on top of this, otherwise, it's gonna, the world's gonna end.
That's so me sometimes.
We all have it. And, it's like recently it got projected onto TP, whatever the anxiety was about. If we had enough toilet paper, we're going to be okay. And it's like, it's really funny, actually. It's like, and, I've seen a lot of memes now, boy, they're really having a ball with this one. And it's like, because you go, that's ridiculous, I heard Costco is refusing to buy you can't bring your toilet paper back either.
If you hoarded too much, guys, and you change your mind, you're stuck with it. It's really hilarious. If there was no food shortage and there was no toilet paper shortage here in Canada, I mean,
of course not. Especially here. We manufacture it big time.
Yeah, but they might have seen some stuff like, in Australia, for example, where they did run out because they rely on imports from Canada.
Yeah.
And so Australia got it first. And the only reason I'm privy to this is it actually happened to me. My sister did an Instagram video where her and her boyfriend showed up to a store to buy toilet paper. Before the coronavirus was like such a huge thing, like when it was just kind of at the beginning stage, when people weren't sure like this was really going to affect us or anything, and they showed up and they did a video because they're like, we came to get toilet paper, and then they showed the video of the empty shelves.
Sure, yeah.
So then when I was here, I was like, oh, well, if it hit Australia, yeah, maybe I should buy toilet paper. So I went out and bought like a family pack. I'm one person. It's going to last me a year. And I go, well, I thought about it afterwards, and I was pretty regretful. Like, I was disappointed in myself, because it was like, you know, Dr. Morse always says, who's the one driving this car? Like, are you letting other people think for you, is what he means. And that's exactly what I did, is I let everyone else, you know, because I saw that happen to my sister, and then my dad said, oh, you better go out and get some toilet paper. And like, you know, it's like, it's not even my thinking, and I'm just showing up and like doing this thing that other people thought I should do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know, the thing is that they had a fear of a shortage of toilet paper. And what happened? They created a shortage of toilet paper.
By hoarding, now no one can get any.
Exactly. You know, so to me, it's like that's where the fear and projecting it on the future becomes actually a self-fulfilling prophecy to me. Because, you know, and the example you just gave, you know, was, you were actually out of it. You just needed a couple of rolls, but no, there wasn't anything. You know, it's like, you know, so you overstock. Oh, I better stock up, because, you know, and this is, you know, to me, whatever is hoarding. I mean, people, obviously there are very wealthy people on this planet that don't know how to share, that are, you know, are billionaires. And, you know, I watched Bill Gates, you know, talking last night, actually, about what's happening currently. Now, this is a family that gives hundreds of millions of dollars through their foundation to events in the world. They don't have a problem sharing, right? He doesn't have a problem with it at all. But there are lots of other people who are in such fear subconsciously that when they get that $1 million or $2 million or $1 billion, it immediately disappears. The fear disappears it, and they really can't relax and go, hey, I don't need this much. You know, I can live on a lot less, no problem, you know, and I can then share that. And to me, it's like, my view is, well, capitalism, the flowering of capitalism is about sharing. And the great philanthropists of the world teach us that this is, you know, this is where it can go. And what my hope, my prayer is that a lot of people who are very wealthy on this planet start sharing in ways that are really helpful to everyone, so that we can live much more peaceful lives, much more restful lives. And yeah, hopefully this is going to manifest. This is one of the other manifestations that's possible right now, based on what we're seeing.
Yeah, there's so much benefit to this if you can see it. And actually, my mom sent me an email from something she found online that Bill Gates released. It's called A Beautiful Message from Bill Gates. Corona COVID-19 virus really teaching us. Maybe you could Google that if you're interested, but it's this whole long thing. And it's like, basically, you know, he's talking about as he meditates on what's happening and what the virus is really doing to us. You know, he's coming to all these beautiful realizations of all kinds of opportunities that are being presented during this time. Well, yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned him, because there's some really important lessons here.
Yeah. So that, you know, to me, the more we release the unnecessary subconscious programs, negative programs from the past, the more we relax into the moment, and our lives become abundant. That we, you know, that things manifest for us, they just happen. And it's trusting that place, and that you're in the right place at the right time to get what you need. It's that level of trust that manifests when we really deprogram those unnecessary feelings. And that's what the baby has. The baby's totally trusting, open, right? It's not thinking about, you know, so yeah, when it's hungry, it cries, I'm hungry, you know, just letting people in the environment know that it needs food. And mom's, you know, the mom's there, and away it goes. And by the way, let's say, you know, your mother's out in the backyard, you're sleeping in your crib in the house, she's out in the backyard, maybe working in the garden, and she doesn't hear you, and you're hungry, and then she doesn't come. And then, guess what happens? The fear of not having enough, the fear of not having enough food.
Wow, it starts that early.
It starts that early. And it can happen in a split second. It's and then it's in there. One of the men I worked with in Los Angeles when I lived down there he was a Brit, and he was fairly elderly at the time, and he had been through World War II and the Blitz in London, and there was not enough food. He was a young boy and trying to grow, and he needed food, and there wasn't much. It was always restricted. He was always hungry, he said. And he said, look at my cupboards. And we were in the kitchen. He started opening the cupboards. He had food everywhere.
Whoa.
He had huge cupboards, like all around this kitchen, and they were full of food. He said, I always make sure I have a lot more than I need. Because, so it was so powerful in him. He couldn't get past it at that time in his life. And so these things are very real in the way that they, and he was quite aware. I don't need it. He knew he didn't need all this food, but he couldn't stop himself.
Yeah, one of the things that I've found that's helped me with that kind of thinking, the sparsity mindset, is exactly what we were talking about, like how a small baby is cared for, and we were all this little baby that couldn't do anything for ourselves.
That's right. We are truly helpless.
Yes, and I'm learning this from the Buddhist nun I mentioned to you, Venerable Thubten Chodron.
Yeah.
She's got her Sparsity Abbey, her monastery.
Yes.
She's been a nun as long as I've been alive. She's a cool woman, man. And she taught, like, one of her YouTube videos that, we need to acknowledge that we were, like, our parents and our caretakers did everything for us.
Sure.
And this is how loved we were. Because of course, everyone can get into that victim state. I've done a lot of work on my inner victim. We can all go there where we blame our parents. Right. Oh, my mom didn't pick me up from school and I was left stranded as a 5-year-old. I had to wait until she remembered,
Now we're talking about the fear of abandonment, right? That, we all have it, to some degree, right? And because our parents can't be perfect. They can't be there for every second for our needs. And we have to learn to take control too of our bodies. Right? So when you talk about helplessness, there's that moment in time when we are realizing that, hey, these people can pick things up and move them around, and I can't do that. And so what happens? Well, that's the fear of being out of control. I want control. I want to be able to grab that thing that they can grab, and all of a sudden there's the helplessness becomes a subconscious fear of being out of control. So that's just one level of being out of control.
I relate to this one fully. The experience I had in Costa Rica was pretty eye-opening for my need to be in control and like letting go of these these type of, I call them layers. Like, it's like, a queen versus someone who's perfectly happy living off the land. Like, that queen needs to shed some of those layers to get over to the other side, because both of them are capable of being perfectly happy. It's just how they view their current situation. You could be happy wherever you are. But it's interesting because the minute you don't have a lot, if you have a strong faith that you have always been taken care of, when you think back to, like, when you were a baby and everything was done for you, and, you think back to other hardships in your life and how they all worked out, everything was given to you that you needed to heal from that.
Sure. I mean, look at the abundance you have right now in your own life, right? Right. And, I'm the same. I've always had all I needed. Living in this amazing country called Canada, it's like we have a level of abundance that very few countries have on the planet. And to me, it's like, so we can really drop our fears and then learn to, share at a whole other level. Right? And to me, that's to me where we're going. I mean, this is a great country, and we have a lot to share for the planet, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful to be able to. So
Canada, like
it
seems like we're in a, sorry to interrupt, but it seems like we're in a like pretty good social economic class. Like sometimes I wonder, like, you know, for this like rebirth of mine, like to be born into this, like I'm wondering what karma I did in another life to get this, you know, this level of privilege. Right here. Yeah. You know, in comparison to like one of the meditations that the Buddhists have taught me is you sit and you contemplate who you could have been in a past life, and you're supposed to choose like the opposite sex. So you sit there and you visualize, you know, I'm a female, so I visualize myself as a male, and then I would visualize myself in like a totally different social economic class. So I pictured myself in India as like, you know, somebody living off very little. And I find those meditations so interesting. You said you're into different meditations yourself, like different visualizations and things?
What I call active meditations, which technically isn't a true meditation, but it can help us to get to, a meditative state. Vipassana is the classic meditation that was taught in India. It was taught.
Love Vipassana, my favorite.
But first, we need to clear the ground of the fearful mind, what I call the unnecessary fearful mind. So obviously, certain fears are necessary. It's you don't want to forget to not touch the stove when the burner's on. Like that's there needs to be that's legitimate. This is going to be a problem, and it's going to hurt if you touch it. So that's a legitimate fear. But to me, for instance, to live in this country and have the fear of not having enough, not legitimate. It's just not.
So would you say that it's important to have these teachings that you provide in order for people to enhance their meditation? Because something that I'm noticing is like, I talk to people and I suggest meditation, but it's like, how are they ever going to meditate if they don't know really anything about meditation?
Yeah, again, there are so many different active meditation techniques to begin a deprogramming of the unnecessary subconscious mind. There are many. And so to me, I have to really assess that with the individual. I have to get to know them where they are in their own life process, their spiritual process, their awareness, their self-awareness. And then I can recommend something, right, that could be useful.
Some of my favorite work with you was some of the past life regression that we did back in the day, where you would have me visualize any person in this life, and then we would kind of meditate on like who they could potentially have been in another life to me. And then the dream interpretation. I actually have a dream that I wanted to share with you. That would be okay.
Go for it.
Okay, this one's a little embarrassing. But it's in the past. But not who I am today.
It's not. It's history. It's history in some way.
Nothing to be afraid of.
It needs to be released.
Yeah, so maybe you could help me with this one, Ross. And this kind of gives people a little idea of what our sessions are like too when I meet with you as my spiritual healer. So I'll tell you the backstory of who the person is that I dreamt about. So this is someone that I had as a boyfriend. We were in a relationship when I was like a teenager. And then around the age of 21, I moved away from that suburb. I lived in Brampton, suburbs of Toronto, just north of Toronto, to come to the city, where I thought all the opportunities are. I got to get to Toronto. And this person, I didn't know until years down the road, held a lot of resentment toward me for leaving. And the reason I found this out was we started dating in my 20s after I lived in Toronto for a certain number of years. We got back together. It was back when internet was pretty new, and he was sending me MSN Messenger messages. Nobody does that anymore. And and I had just gotten out of a serious relationship, and it's kind of nice, like someone familiar, you know, from your past. Excuse me. That's some expectoration going on from my orange juice.
There's an emotional, well, it's also emotional what we're talking about. So it's
okay, that too.
Yeah. That too, yeah.
I'm purging. So yeah, we got back together, and that's when he revealed to me. He was like, you know, we were just like in passing, we were talking. And I forget how it came up, but he was like, all of a sudden, he just goes, well, you're the one who moved away and didn't stay in touch with anyone. And I was just like, what?
The edge. His edge.
Yeah, because there's so much anger and like resentment. And I was like, okay, well, like, what, you didn't have a telephone either? Like, you couldn't, you know, stay in touch? But it was like, oh, well, she picked up and left us all. It was like that victim mindset. So, you know, anyways, like, I didn't really handle it well. I was like, this was before I got into any of these healings, probably around the same time I met you, Ross. And so I didn't know how to handle that. So I just, usually anything that was hard, I would just brush it off. I wasn't willing to go there. And so now, just the other day, so we had that relationship, and then that also ended poorly. Okay, so I won't go into detail there. But there was some resentment as well, like how we ended that relationship. It seems like I'm always the one leaving everyone. And I think that's also another issue I'll talk to you about another time, Ross, is like, you know, the inability to just like commit to something. Like just show up for this thing and just make that decision, and don't just like be flaky and fly away whenever you want, you know?
Yeah, we're talking about the fear of intimacy, just so that it's just, and that's the general heading, but then it's like where, what, where, how, you know, and how to finish it.
And so in the dream I had, so I gave you the context. So I had a dream about this person, and you know, it was very loving. He was there, like upset, you know, like, but not so much angry, just like sad, like just really sad. And like there was no crying, because I know that's not the kind of guy he is, and I know a lot of guys don't express themselves that way, you know, because society teaches them that it's weakness. But I really see it as a strength, and hope more men can cry, you know, men and women, you know. And so he's like a little bit down, and then so I'm just like caressing his back in the dream, and I'm just like, it's okay. And you know, there was no real talking, but it was a whole energetic exchange of, you know, he expressed his true feelings about me leaving, number one, in the first place, like leaving that area and moving to Toronto initially. And then the second thing of how we ended our relationship. So he expressed, you know, the emotion around it. And then I just was like rubbing his back. And to me, I take it as like, kind of like, you know, in those Buddhist purification practices, where you might regret something that you've done in your life, and then you're to visualize the person. If there was a person involved, usually there is, you visualize that person and ask for their forgiveness, because sometimes in this life you can't talk to that person. They won't talk to you, or maybe they're
gone.
Past. So you visualize the person, and then you visualize yourself asking for their forgiveness, and then you visualize them accepting your apology and forgiving you. And you visualize how that would make you feel.
Right.
So in that dream, I don't know if it was like a similar purification.
I was going to ask, one question I was going to ask you as you were telling me the dream was, how would you talk about the feeling tone of the dream itself, like the whole feeling tone of it?
I think it was a positive experience. It was just like he's allowed to feel that way. Like he had the permission, not from me, but just his own permission, even for both, to just, express these really deep emotions, this hurt and this pain. The abandonment, it's such a painful topic, when one feels abandoned, even if we are in our victim state, like, that's how you feel at that moment. That's an emotion flowing through,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty positive experience.
Right. And you were rubbing his back, you said.
Yeah.
And what was the feeling of that? Like that energy of that rubbing the back? His back.
Yeah, just like, that intimacy, I guess.
Intimacy?
That like level of connection, human connection, that I think we all so deeply want and need.
So, yeah, I mean, again, one of the things that's coming from me right now is that, he's you. And you're healing yourself. You're healing some deep sadness. You're healing some emotional state in you right now that's very, very about, coming to a much deeper connection with you and other people, and especially what I call the intimate other, which is the person that we choose to, to really align with as lovers and friends. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So you're healing yourself. You're a healer who's healing yourself. And that's what we all need to do. Anybody out there who's a healer who's watching this, it's like it's healer, heal thyself. And there are skillful means. And dream work is definitely one area that I'm very interested in terms of healing ourselves, in terms of spiritual development. It's powerful. It's powerful. It's one of the, greatest ways to heal, to deprogram the fearful, unnecessary, fearful subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And that can extend right back into past lives, by the way, which is a whole other area that we haven't really talked about today, which is definitely, part of the work I do, because that's one of my, shall we say, gifts I've been given, is to really tune into the past life connections that create karmic issues that we're still holding and projecting in this life onto the world unnecessarily.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons you and I connect so deeply is, we share these similar beliefs, and it's more of a belief. It's like a knowingness, that everything has a cause and a reaction. And that's really all that karma is, what seeds are you planting today? One of my favorite teachings from that nun I mentioned earlier is like, she always says, if you plant grapefruit seeds, you're gonna get grapefruits. And that's the kind of work I do with people as well. Ross is a lot of it is emotional and spiritual work. We start through the back door, though, in a way, like the secret entrance of like the physicality. Let's focus on the diet. Let's clean everything up. Let's get you on these herbs. Look at your genetic weaknesses, and we just start there with the physicality, so that then they can connect deeper and deeper to the emotional and spiritual body.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of doorways into healing ourselves on every level of our being, and the
cells have to literally detox all these emotions that have been stored as energy blockages.
Sure.
And as we facilitate the cleaning of our cells through, say juicing or fasting or a lot of fruit, eating foods that require the least amount of digestion to free up that energy source, then the body can use that energy to start cleaning out its cells, its lymphatic system, and then through that you start to really tap into different levels into the whole emotional healing. And
it opens up, yeah, the whole emotion area right on. Yeah. I mean, you clearly have a lot of knowledge, and it's, it's just wonderful that you've been doing so much work with people, and it's just getting started.
Thank you. Yeah, like you always say, when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing,
Yeah.
you first of all, the money is always there.
Hey, yeah,
Finances are never a problem.
Yeah. The first law of money, if you're following your heart, you're doing the right thing, the money will be there. You may not, you may be really surprised on how it manifests, and it's not what you thought, but you just go for it.
That I've noticed a lot since I started my coaching practice, and and other little gifts, just like you start to kind of, I don't know if I feel like more motivated, but there's a certain momentum that starts to flow, and it's like you start to be guided and directed into higher ways of operating as a human, as a being.
Oh yeah. So, well, it's been great talking to you. And,
always a pleasure. I hope we get to do this again. Maybe we could schedule another one soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay.
The timing. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Great to see you. Great to talk to you.
You as well.
All right.